The association made submissions on this matter. It's now being adopted by the parliamentary committee overseeing it. What do you think should be the next move?
Well, look, I think that we still do not agree that the constitution needs to be changed, but the report and the recommendations seem to indicate that what they are recommending is a change that will clarify from a definitional point of view under what circumstances expropriation without compensation can take place. And if that's the limit of the amendment, well then I think that if the committee has recommended that, and if after due process through the NCOP and National Assembly that's what government decides to do, so be it. But what I think we would urge now is that in the intervening period, while this process is underway, and it will be a long process, that the President should actually reiterate what he said right at the beginning, that we will undertake land reform and even expropriation without compensation in a way that does not threaten property rights, in a way that does not threaten food security and the exposure certainly that banks have to property in this country, and that if we do it in a way that the public and private sector works together, we believe that we can actually turn this into an opportunity where we can bring particularly black people into productive economic activity, and we can contribute to economic growth. But I think our priorities have got to be to attract investment and put our economy onto a growth path, and we've got to conduct land reform that will enable us to do that.
Yeah. Now, if these so-called crisp, clear policy frameworks are not put in place, if it doesn't happen the way you say it should be happening, what do you fear will happen?
Well, I think then perceptions will drive reality. And you know, investors outside, people who actually are responsible for portfolio investments as well, do not want to understand or do not understand the complexities of this issue. And so the perception will be that we don't have clear policy on this, we don't have consistency on this. The perception will be that without actually clarity on what the constitutional change would be, the perception could be that it would actually threaten property, protection of property rights. And that would then create an environment where investors would be reluctant to actually invest, and it would inhibit growth. I don't think that will happen. I'm reasonably confident that the government, particularly through the President, will actually create some certainty around this now that the recommendations have been put to the National Assembly. And I think that the President and his team would understand that we do need to ensure that negative perceptions do not persist around this issue.
Very quickly, what do you say to those who say you're worried about protecting the rich or farmers because banks have loaned money to them to buy property?
No, it's not a question of protecting the rich or anything of that sort. The reality is that banks have approximately 160 billion rand lent to commercial farmers. We do not want to create a situation where the banking sector in this country is put in a situation where risks are brought into the system and the banking sector is put at risk. We've seen what happened in other countries when banking sectors actually fail, and some banks fail. We haven't had this in this country, and we shouldn't have this in this country. It's not a question of protecting the rich against the poor, protecting those who have land against those who don't have land. I think that the land reform issue is not a black issue, it's a South African issue. If we don't conduct land reform responsibly and sustainably, and we do have to do land reform, then we actually do not address some of the myriad of problems we have in the country. So it's not a zero-sum game here. Trade-offs will have to be made. I think there is sufficient goodwill amongst a broad range of stakeholders to ensure that that land reform happens in a sustainable way and in a way that brings a lot of people into the productive economy through agriculture and other areas in places like inner city and so on, where we can enable black people to own property, to be housed, to rent residential properties and so on.
Yeah.
And all of this can be done, and we need to do it as South Africans.
All right, thank you so much for your time and your insight. Appreciate it. That was Banking Association South Africa's Managing Director, Cass Kuvadia.